Hey everyone, it's Rachel back again with another video, continuing to count down my favorite albums from 2020, this time with number 3, which is Loathe. I Let It In and It Took Everything. This album is an absolute masterpiece. It is phenomenal. From the very first moment that I heard it when it dropped this year, I fell in love with it, and I am still just, you know when you put on an album and it has the ability to like get you all excited like it did the first time it came out? This is definitely one of those albums where like if I haven't listened to it in full for a little while and I get to do it again, I get all excited like that because it's just such a journey of an album. It's such a diverse album, like what they did with Two-Way Mirror and Is It Really You? And then you've got stuff like Aggressive Evolution and Broken Vision Rhythm. And it's all phenomenal. There is not a bad track on this album. There's, we get a decent amount of music too, given there's like theme and some shorter tracks, but this is definitely up there for me. It took me a while to find something to take its number 2 spot, but I did. But it sat at number 2 for a long while, and there just aren't words. Like, whenever I talk to somebody who has not listened to this album that I know appreciates at least one genre that I feel like is in Loathe's Venn diagram or can be enjoyed, then I always try to get them to listen to that album, because I feel like so many people listen to it and they're like, holy shit. Because there is something for a lot of people. I'm not going to say something for everybody because there's not like country music on it or anything, but within a certain realm, there is something for everybody. And it's my favorite tracks off of this, just like with the Hollow Front album, are kind of like a grab bag. Except with this, it's kind of like a genre grab bag, but my favorites are definitely Broken Vision Rhythm, Aggressive Evolution, and Is It Really You? Is It Really You is one of my favorite songs of this entire year. I remember after the album came out, I was listening to it a bunch, and I fell in love with it, but then one day, I decided that I was gonna, grab my mask and go physically to a record store, which I hadn't done in a while. And I found a CD copy of I Let It In and I Took Everything. And I put it in my car and I listened to it on repeat even more and like fell in love with it again. And there's just something about like an album you can put on like that, and like just I remember driving home and like listening to it again and like falling in love with it all over again. And of course, obviously I love an album like that if I'm falling in love with it all over again, but an album that you can re-fall in love with, if that makes sense. I really appreciate an album that can do that for me, because a lot of times when I run an album into the ground like that, there's no re-falling in love, because I've just become accustomed to it kind of. So I try to I've definitely done a good job of making the amount of music that I listen to much larger this year, so it's not really happening as much anymore. I used to like really run albums into the ground. Like there would be no list of every Friday I post like my 25 most listened to albums of the week. There would be none of that. I would be so fixated on one album, but I found in like completely indulging myself in the music and like listening to as much music as I possibly could, that it's easier for me to like bulk up my listening and stuff. So maybe that has something to do with it, but really I think that this would be an album that I'd be able to fall in love with again anyway a million times, because it's just that fantastic. There's definitely certain tracks where, everybody keeps saying Deftones, blah, blah, but the whole album is not like that. The whole album is not like one thing, which I love, because I liked the Deftone influence a lot too. To be honest with you, I never really listened to Deftones before Loathe put out their album, and everybody kept saying like, oh, Deftones, like obviously I had heard of them before, and I had heard some of the songs from them before on the radio and stuff when I was younger, but I didn't know that at that point in time. I don't know why, I just didn't really listen to them, and because of Loathe's album, I actually started listening to Deftones. So for me, I really think that Loathe is one of those special bands that does something. They're able to just make the music that they want to, and they're so cool. I feel like it's Connor's little tiny glasses that make them seem so freaking cool in the music video. But like, you know what I'm saying? Like, just like with the Is It Really You vocals, I would describe those as cool too. I'm not talking about cool like the cool kids in high school or anything. I just mean like cool and smooth and like just so, in the music video, like the aesthetic of Loathe, I guess, is just like way cooler than I should be listening to or something like that. But man, I love this album. Another band, I'm seeing some trends here in my favorite bands, but this is another one where that bass tone is just like spot on for me. I love just the string. I feel like in general, because there's some really amazing guitar work in here too, and the vocal performance is very diverse as well. Obviously, with a diverse album comes diverse performances from the members in the band. I think that they nailed it. I would really like to, I need to read some more interviews and stuff with Loathe and see if they've done much, because I'd like to know a lot more about how this album came to be and, you know, how they picked the artwork and stuff, because that artwork, it looks exactly like the album sounds. I picked up the vinyl copy as well from Sharptone, and whenever I'm listening to it, I always keep the album art just sitting on my little like record stand thing, because I love to listen to it and like look at that album art as well, because it really depicts what you're hearing. And oh yeah, there's just so much that could be said about this album, and I feel like it's hard to sum it up into like this video too, with an album like this where you've got stuff like Aggressive Evolution, where oh man, that song, I love that. Maybe that it's between Aggressive Evolution and Is It Really You, I think, for like my absolute favorites off of this album, because Is It Really You, it's just beautiful. It's a gorgeous song. There are just no words. Sometimes you just listen to a song and it just like, you love it. You fall in love with the song, and that is what happened from the very first time that I heard Is It Really You. I do that with a lot of songs, but not like that. For me, that song was like different than anything I had heard at that point in the year. It's still so different. Nothing like that has hit. That's definitely probably my top 5 favorite songs of this year, if not like my top 3. But Aggressive Evolution is what I was originally talking about. The contrast there with the clean vocals, or in the transition too, from like the more clean, smooth parts to those unclean parts, nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. And it just goes on, and then like I was talking about with the tracks like Two-Way Mirror, Is It Really You, you get something a little smoother, more clean vocals, but it's such a beautiful track. And then you know after that you go into Gourd, which is more of like a heavy track, but the transitions that they have between those songs, like when you go from Is It Really You to Gourd and stuff like that, it still fits to tie everything together. And it's amazing. I love this album very much. I love how the bass, like the tone of I almost said the bass line. The tone of the bass, just oh man, you can hear so much bass in this. This year I got some extra bass headphones that I've mentioned quite a few times, because there are just certain songs that like really make that clear. And this album is a lot of fun to listen to with anything that's extra bass, because there are just so many parts that are like, oh wow, yeah, that sounds great. I utilize the bass, you know? That's all I have to say to people. Utilize the bass, because it sounds amazing when it's not overlooked. Why do people overlook the bass? I don't know. But I'm glad that Loathe doesn't, and I'm glad that I'm listening to more albums this year that are not overlooking the bass, because it's crucial. The bass is important. But also, the guitar on this, beautiful. There are parts that are like, oh wow, yeah, that's and then there are parts that are just, like I said, beautiful. So diverse in all aspects, diverse performances from Loathe. I love this album. It is incredible. So this is my number 3 favorite album from 2020. Let me know what you thought of this album in the comments, and what your favorite albums from this year have been. If you have any guesses to what my number 2 might be, let me know in the comments. My number 1, I'm not that impressed if you can guess my number 1, because I've been very open about it since before it even came out. So anyway, those are my thoughts. This is my number 3 favorite album of 2020. If you are enjoying the style of music, bands, and content that I post on my YouTube channel, I post more music-related content on Instagram. My handle there is Rachel Reacts, just like my YouTube channel, but I will put it up here on the screen for you if you have any interest in following me, as well as put the link in the description. I will also put the invite link for the Discord server in the description. We have had a bunch of people joining lately. It's been a lot of fun, so if you're interested in joining our little community, chatting with us, whatnot, the link will be in the description. And lastly, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it.